Hey guys, I hope everybody's doing good. I know it's been a minute since we've kind of seen each other live. I miss you guys and hope everything's going good. I'm gonna have another video up for y'all to check out. Hopefully you've already seen that. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into government for today. One of the big tricky things I've noticed over the years is sometimes we get governments confused with economic systems. They're very similar, they go alike. You'll see that usually one type of government goes with a type of economic system. But again, I always kind of state our goals for our notes. As we go through these slides, I would like you to take notes and try to answer these questions. Distinguish between and define different types of governments. Distinguish means I can tell the difference between communism and dictatorship, or direct democracy and representative democracy. I expect you to know those differences. Um, and I'd like you to be able to use those like in a scenario. So if I described something, would you be able to say what government it is based on the description? I want you to give examples of how different government works in action, and I'll kind of give some of those as we go through it, and I want you to think of your own. Last, I want you to explain how choices are made by participating in different scenarios, okay? And we're going to kind of do that as a class when I return. So the big question is, how are you going to remember all this stuff? How do you know? I'm sure you're tired of this, but if you're new, you haven't seen it, I want you to take notes. You got to be able to do all of this. And in order to do that, you got to take notes. If you have your own system, if you want to handwrite it, do it. If you would like a set of Cornell notes, here they are. We're going to go ahead and begin. So, first thing, as always, we will start out with a definition. So, government is an organization that has the power to make and enforce laws for society. It's also known as a civil authority. So, like, I have a picture of the police here, and I don't know why I chose the mean one, but civil authority isn't always a bad thing. I mean, like roads to get to school, the school building, certain infrastructure, things that are around us are all part of that civil authority. So I always have this question I like to ask it, and I want you to write this down in your notes, and we'll talk about it when we rejoin as a class. But what would life look like without government? And what do you think the earliest governments look like, going all the way back in time? Or maybe like American governments or African, like how far back can we go? What did they look like? Write a sentence or two in your note. You can pause here and write that down and then press play. All right, so you should have answered that question by now. Let's kind of look about it. So let me ask you this question. So think about this to yourself. You don't have to write it in your notes, but like, what if you just came to school and there were no adults, no teachers, no nothing? And you just came in and were expected to sit down, do your work, get everything done, and that's how it would work. And at the end, you would turn everything in. So like, what do you think would happen in that scenario? It's like we can discuss it as a class, but what a lot of people have said is in the past as well, nothing would get done. It would just be crazy, it would be chaotic. And then some people would say, well, some people would come in and do what they were supposed to do, and then maybe a few people would be like bad and mess everything up for everyone. And that's kind of stuck with me throughout the year. So kind of think about that and we'll discuss it as a class, see which way we go. Moving on. We're going to kind of look at 4 governments today. Now I promise to move quickly. We're already a few minutes in, so I want to make sure we can kind of go through these in order. So democracy is defined as rule by government of elected officials. It means people pick their leaders. To simplify it, I listed some. The people choose who they want to lead them. Now look, there's 2 specific ways they do that. And it's either through like a direct democracy, and that means one person, one vote. I choose those words very specifically because that's how we know it today. But in ancient Roman times, it would have been, land owning males. Women didn't get a chance to vote. So the way we define democracy over time has changed. There's another one called representative, and that's what we have in the United States. Citizens elect leaders to represent them. We have an electoral college. So if you notice the last election, well, the last 3 Republicans to be elected to the president, George W. Bush, George H. Bush, and Donald Trump, they all won the electoral college, but did not win the popular vote. So if we had a direct democracy, we would have a different president. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing either way. I'm merely stating fact. When we look at the next form of government, it's communism. And this is a system in which government controls all social and economic systems. Basic freedoms are limited. However, in theory, everything is owned by the people. So it's this idea, like China's an example. Your college education is free. Your hospital bill is free. Heaven forbid you ever get sick. There's like things that we pay for in America, they get for free in China. But here's kind of the catch 22 with that. In communism, there a lot of times aren't a lot of options. And we kind of see it like, there's this idea that like, okay, in the United States, in a command economy, the market decides what people want, and that gives us more choices and better products, right? Well, in a command economy, the government decides the distributions and the methods through which it's distributed. So you might have less choices. So it's not good or bad. I'm just merely trying to state some fact. We'll go into more depth. You might have seen this next one, which is monarchy. And this is government ruled by a king or queen based on heredity. So an example is Saudi Arabia. They have had a monarchy the last 59 years. And then this is the royal family of England, which most people know. We do need to distinguish there are two types. There's absolute and constitutional. I kind of like to make the description of like in an absolute monarchy, if I'm the leader and I decided it's Taco Tuesday, we will do nothing but eat tacos on Tuesday. There is no choice. That is it. I am not limited by the laws. But in a constitutional monarchy, I might have some power and I might say it's Taco Tuesday, but then other people and laws are in place to kind of, limit me from going crazy and saying only we can have tacos on Tuesday. So the point I'm trying to make is we can look at constitutional and absolute monarchies the same way we look at direct and representative, in that they have one main kind and then they split off into different. Okay. The last one we're going to look at is dictatorship. And this is ruled by one individual or a small group. The people have limited freedoms. Citizens do not have a choice when it comes to electing leaders or making laws. And an example is going to be North Korea. They've had the same family in power without change for 4 generations. And we can kind of go specifically like way into detail with North Korea. There's other examples of like dictatorships like Cuba. There were some in Africa, and we can kind of talk about those specifically when we meet back in class. But the main thing to know is it's like one person and a small group of people have all the power. And normally they live very extravagant, lush, worry-free lives while the rest of the people kind of struggle. But again, we can kind of talk about all of these things. And again, because Andy O'Neill, was raised in a democracy, I kind of feel certain ways, and I know more about this one. So when I've gone through these, and if I spoke about them in a way that seems like, oh, Mr. O'Neill thinks America and democracy is the best, it's just because I was raised that way, and I don't necessarily think that. There's a lot of my opinion, comes from knowing these structures, and this is kind of it. So once we know how these things work, we can kind of talk about how they work. So this is kind of what I want us to think about at the end. I know I've been talking for a long time. I do apologize, but I want you to kind of like think about these. How are government and economic systems alike or different? Try making a Venn diagram, a T-chart, or a list or sentence, however you want to do that. And what type of government would it take the longest to make a decision? So if we're looking at democracy, communism, monarchy, or dictatorship, if we had to make a decision, like pass a new law, or if coronavirus happened and we need to immediately make a decision, what type of government would it take the longest to make a decision? What type of government would a decision be made the fastest? And lastly, that's it. That is lastly. So again, I've taken a bunch of your time. I appreciate all of y'all listening, and we will discuss this when I come back week after next. Take care, guys.